Hello. We'll see how this goes today. All right, we're going to jump into data management. We're going to build a series on data import, what good data looks like, how to manage your data. So let's start with data import and some important aspects of data import. First things first, good data in, good data out. Crap data in, crap data out. It's just kind of the way it goes. So an important philosophy to abide by is try to always encourage your users to put in good, high quality data. Right? That kind of goes without saying, but it's often overlooked. I've seen lots of systems with maybe subpar or less than ideal data. There's a few things we've implemented to help support this. Validation rules, while they can be a little bit annoying occasionally, are really useful to training your team on proper data input practices. Like, hey, we're missing these required fields to be able to make good decisions or to just have the full set of data. So validation rules can help with that. Also, try and limit free text fields. You can't report on them very well, and unless you want to add a million filters, they're hard to sort by. You can't sort by them or filter your list views or anything. So you can, but again, it's really difficult. And if it's a large text area, forget about it. So few basic things. Try and use pick lists, predetermined values, booleans, things that are easy to report on and easy to filter with. It really will make your life better. And you can have some of those free text fields as you need to expand comments, of course. It's always going to be there, but just some food for thought. There's a lot of other tidbits, and we'll jump into some of those, but it's important to have good, high quality data in the system. Salesforce is a database at its core. And it's a relational database, has many tables. So each object, lead, opportunity, they're a database, a table. They have what's called foreign keys. And so you're able to map one table over here with another table over here using a foreign key. Each table has its own primary key, right? So the main ID or identifier for that table, for a lead, it has its own record ID. You've seen that. It starts with 00Q. An opportunity starts with 006, and a contact 003, an account 001, and you'll see those IDs throughout the system. So every record or file has its own unique ID, and that's how they can map to other tables and to one another. It creates a really powerful schema relationship, helps keep your data straight. It allows things to be deduplicated as well. They have deduplication rules. So there's a lot going into trying to keep your data clean, and at the core, Salesforce is a database with an interface on top of it to try and make it more user-friendly and add automation and a lot of power behind that data. The great thing about that is it has really good database architecture, which makes it fast and very robust and infinitely scalable. Millions of rows, billions of rows if you need of data that you can put in there. So it's a great thing. It allows the business to go wherever it needs to go, and you can create new tables. So a custom object is just a new data table with new records or rows in it. You can identify the fields and what type of fields those are, and then you can just be creative and create, the universe you want to make. So a little bit there about data. Let's jump into an example of data import and what that might look like. Salesforce has several data import tools. It has its own import wizard, a simple and a more advanced import wizard built right in. And you'll see that when you go to an object, you'll see, you know what, let me just jump into one here. Let's go to get real-8020.sandbox, and I will show you on the lead record or lead list view here, you can hit import, and that's going to take you to the import wizard. I'm going to go ahead and click it just to show there. So look, you've got the basic import from file or CSV, or import, update, or export with a little more advanced tools. We're going to jump into the advanced version here. Just gives you more options, which is nice. Allows you to map additional things, choose some other objects. So we'll let that load. In the meantime, I'm going to show you an example of an account contact data import file. So here we've split one up. Accounts and contacts are a little unique. You've got what's called record types, which identifies what kind of account is this? Is it a business account or a person account? And in other objects, you might have other record types, such as, is this an REI record or is this a retail record, a retail buyer or seller? And so in accounts, you can have a B2B account or a B2C. And a person account or a B2C account combines the account and contact into one record. So you have all those fields that you need for both, since you're selling to an individual or person instead of a business. A business account, you have just high-level account details in its own record, and then you have related contacts or employees attached to that account. So you would identify a record type, and you don't have to put a record type ID with accounts. You can actually, when you import, you'll tell it if it's a person account or a business account. But if you want to, for your own sake, you can either put an ID here, or you can put just your own Boolean or filter to say, hey, I want these are my person accounts, these are my business accounts, and then you can split those up and import them later. But if you're doing leads or opportunities, you need to have the record type ID in here. The names can actually be duplicated, so you want to make sure it's the record type ID, and there are some ways of grabbing that in the platform. And then a few other things you've got here that I'll cover more in the how-to, but you can see you've just got fields like any spreadsheet and then values. And in person or business accounts, you want the account name and website, and if you've got a phone number, maybe a billing address, and you would put those basic account details, and then you would add contacts. And those contacts would be, their first and last name, their own email, their title maybe, and some other details about that contact. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and insert here the title field, because that's useful to have, very useful to have. And you would put their information, and then you would put the account name that they're tied to. So if you've got a row for the account, and then you've got rows for their contacts, you can still add that account name, and it will relate those contacts to the account. And it will give you the option of how you want to tie. If you want to tie them by name or by a unique ID that you're creating that account with. So you've got some options on how you tie those together. And let's see, anything else on this sheet specifically? Lots of data that you can put in. There's way more fields even on the account and contact, but these are some of the basic ones. So their buy box, if you want to put that in to get them started. If they're a vendor, you've got some, license information. If they're a realtor, you've got some of their realtor information. If they're, buyer seller, what kind of contact are they? That's in here too. Contact type, maybe they're client. You've also got if you have details on how and when they like to be contacted, birth dates, etc. So you got lots of good stuff, good values to put in there. We've provided and can provide additional data for you. Your schema has. And your schema is like the design of your database, the objects, what type of fields they are, maybe their basic values. And we've provided some of the pick list values that you'll see out of the box in an account and contact. And these will be different for if you've changed them. So we can grab those and put them in so you have a reference so you know those values. And if you wanted to, say on account type, you can make this a drop down of only the allowed values so that it's all good and you've kind of pre-vetted it before you put it in. So that's an option. A few how-tos or a few details here. We've added some information there, giving you a definition of business accounts, person accounts, which we've already run through. If you want more information, Salesforce has great training on data import, so highly recommend going into some of their trails on data import as well as their help documents, and they've even got a video series here that's useful. So jump into that. It'll give you all sorts of information. A few other notes. There's very low tolerance on data import. So if anything fails in the row, or even an automation gets triggered that fails, it will reject that row. It's just to maintain integrity, database integrity. It's really important. Dates and times. So I'll go through a few, like kind of the validations. Dates and times need to be in ISO 8601 format. So that probably means nothing, but just, year, month, day, and then the time in a certain format too. It often will reject them if they're not in the right format, but you can add those in through most of your, Google Sheets or Excel can match those formats, no problem. Pick list values. If it's a restricted pick list, you want to make sure that those pick list values match what you have in the system, the API name in the system. If it's unrestricted, that means it allows you to import additional values and it will just kind of add them to the list. They don't become available for everyone, but it doesn't deny them. It allows them to come in. They go in as inactive, and then they could be activated later. So it's something to keep in mind. Your Booleans or your true false fields just need to be the text, true or false. So 0, 1s, yes, no's don't really work. So just true or false values. Multi-pick lists, kind of unique animals. They need to be semicolon delimited. So value A, semicolon B, semicolon C, and that will accept that in and write those multi-pick list values. Lookup fields, or so if you're on the contact and you're looking up to a transaction or a property or something, those usually need to be an ID. So the record ID that you want to match to, or if you're looking up to an owner, it often needs to be the user ID, 005 something of that user. That'll help make sure it gets attached to the right record. Occasionally, some lookup fields, and you'll see that when you go to the import wizard, some lookup fields will give you an option of, hey, how do you want to match this record? Do you want to match on the name or an email address or another, an ID? And so sometimes you'll have an option on telling it how you want to match those in case you don't want to use or don't have the ID. Record types, as I mentioned, usually need the ID because the names can be the same. We also do provide an external ID field in most major objects. So the lead, opportunity, contact, account, tasks and events, campaigns, and property transactions and properties. They all have external ID fields. That way, if you're coming from another system, you can use that ID to import, and then you can always match on that as you go. So it makes it a lot easier to get data in and upsert it if you need to along the way. So that's here. And there's a few different external ID fields. So the property, for example, has an external 80/20 ID, and then you have another external ID that you could use for another platform you're coming from. And same on the lead, it has an external ID for the lead itself, but also an external ID for the property. So that way you can kind of match on some of those details. Emails are validated. So many times things get kicked out because there's no @ or it's not a full email, or it's got too much of an subdomain on it or something. So emails are validated. They need to be correct and accurate. And it's one email. If it's just an email field, it'll accept one email. It's not comma delimited or anything. It just needs to be one email. Phone's different. That's a text field. It's phone. I think it's maxed at 40 characters, I believe. And it's just text. It will take kind of whatever you put in there, but ideally it needs to be clean as well, so that it can format that for click to dial and actually be a phone field, but it will accept a little bit more in it. We do have a couple of fields in a number of objects that allow you to put in a list, import a list of values, so like email list, mobile list, phone list, campaign list, and property list, for example, so that you could put in a comma or semicolon delimited list of values, and we have triggers that will take those and parse them into their appropriate fields. Because oftentimes you have more than one that you want to import at a time. So instead of trying to match to all the various fields, you can put it in there, and then we'll handle those for you, which is nice. Even on an upsert, if you want to add numbers, that works too. Let's see, addresses are split into their components. So street, city, state, zip, and then also the country. So you have state and pick list values set in your account. It requires a country, or at least a default country. So we always put United States as a default country, or whatever country your home country is, and that will default that country so that the state or territory values become available, because that is a dependency there. If you don't have a country, it's going to wonder, hey, what other sublist am I looking for to validate these, ISO codes for the state or territory? Let's see. So here you can see, for example, building street, city, state, postal code. This one we don't have the country, but should probably add it because we assume their default country is always set. And the state, even though it's going to use the state code value, AZ for Arizona or NY for New York, it still needs to be the spelled out, strange as that is. I've kind of gone the rounds with Salesforce on that. Why can't we put the code in since that's the actual API value, but still wants to be the spelled out name of the state. So just keep that in mind. Put the full name there. That will usually get through well. Even if you're not using pick list values, you're using the text version, then that will work too. So that's, I think, most of what I wanted to cover on just some quick tips on data import. Lead import is very much the same as this. You have the same, owner IDs and record types and some of those lookups, but then the other pick list values, date values, Boolean values, it's all kind of the same. You just want to make sure it's clean. And from here, let's put in accounts and contacts. You'll notice this is business accounts and contacts. This would be person accounts. Leads, let's actually go to leads, see if it'll show any, and then here's your custom objects. If you want to select maybe properties or prospects or property transactions to import those. Let's jump into leads and I'll show you a few examples. We're gonna say add and an update, so that'd be an upsert. If you just want to add new records only, like they're brand new, just hit add new. It'll change some of the options you see. Or if you just want to update, you don't want to create any new, then you can do that. Or if you want to, hey, let's add new and then update any that exist. You can see here it's saying, hey, how do you want to match the lead? And here you can see there's an external ID, the email, the name, or the Salesforce ID. So usually we try and use an ID because the name, of course, you could have lots of leads with the same name. Email could even be in there. So we try and always encourage having an ID of some sort that you're going to match on. So let's say an external ID this time. And if you say, hey, all these leads are coming in from a lead source, you can default that value, which is nice, right? So maybe they're coming from a list, maybe they're all Google PPC leads or something. And then if you want to trigger an assignment rule, like, hey, I want all these leads to be created and then hit my assignment rules. And, these ones go to New York, these ones go to DC, these ones go to Florida. And we've got different acquisition or lead managers in those places. You can do that. If you want to assign them to a campaign, right, then it will look for a campaign ID in the record or in the upload. If you want to automatically attach to a property transaction, you can see we've got an external ID, a Salesforce ID, or the transaction name, property, comparable, skip trace. What user field do you want to use for the acquisition agent? So all those lookups that I mentioned, if you want to, these are ones available if you want to match on some other value rather than the ID, it'll give you an option if we've got it. So you can see though, users, acquisition agent lookup, only has the ID that you can match it by. So a few of those, that's gonna be the same campaigns. We've got external ID, buy box, contact, that's just some more fields here. And the last one, super important. Do you want to trigger workflow rules and processes for new and updated records? So do you want all your flows to trigger and other workflow rules? And that will say, hey, when it gets created, either updated or inserted, go ahead and run all my automations and move things around where they need. If you don't run that, it's just going to import them and try and avoid any automations. If you're having trouble getting it in because your flows are failing or something, maybe it's not bulkified appropriately, then you can not select that. And then if they're all the same record types, this is really nice. They're all the same record type. It's going to show you the available record types for this object. And so you can just select this too, so that if you don't know the ID, you've got it available here, right? So that's super useful. Then it's just going to ask for a CSV, and you would just drop a CSV in here. Let's see, let me see if I've got something I can import. Let's grab this guy. And with that CSV, it's going to give you a quick preview of the fields and an example of the data that might come in there. And if you want to map things manually, it's going to try and auto map for you. But if you want to map manually, let's say, hey, I can map this address here. So you'll see address, you should know better. So street, for example, let's map that one to street. City, let's map that to city, so on and so forth. And you can actually map a single field to multiple values or places, to multiple fields, I should say. So a single CSV column can go to multiple fields here. And then you hit next, and it's going to prepare it. And this one, I don't have an external ID, which I said was required. It's going to prepare it and then launch it. And then you'll see a report of how that import is going. It'll keep you updated and then let you know what succeeded, what failed. You'll get exports of that you can pull out and look at the notes like, hey, this was a duplicate, or this had a bad email, or this date doesn't work, or this state or location doesn't work, that kind of stuff. So something I should mention, I should clear up, I think, rather, is that the standard state fields, so the standard address state and like the lead address is a standard Salesforce field. That requires the full spelled out name. If it's a custom state field, you should be able to use just the 2-character value. So something to clear up there. But in like billing state is a standard address field, and then lead address is as well, so lead state. Okay, hopefully that helps. That's a little bit about data import and data management. Salesforce will do its best to keep things deduplicated. We'll cover that in a minute. I'm Chris Young with 80/20 CRM. Thanks for joining.